What's good? It's Woog. So former 4 Division champ Adrien Broner just told Brian Custer that he basically has no interest in fighting young up-and-comer Devin Haney, who, let's be honest, holds a belt that says WBC on it, but this is one of those BS you've been promoted from interim champ to regular champ type of belts, while Vasyl Lomachenko is the real WBC champ at 135. Who's since been elevated to franchise champion like Canelo was at 160 middleweight. So yeah, I can't take Haney's new regular title seriously. But he is, by today's modified standard, technically a champion, and he's been an outstanding prospect. I've been paying attention to him since he was 16, shooting Devin Haney TV videos, throwing them up on YouTube when he was fighting professionally in Mexico in like these small clubs before he was 18 years old. But who did he beat exactly to earn a championship? Zaur Abdullayev? Exactly. But he is one of the most buzzworthy young names in the sport. He's only 21 and is already looking like he has the various tools to not only be a physically talented fighter, but a well-rounded technician educated in the sweet science. And Adrien Broner, who is 0-2-1 in his last 3 fights, is saying that he has no interest in fighting the guy, saying, quote, "I don't need Devin Haney. Devin Haney need Adrien Broner. I don't need a Devin Haney. Let's be honest, what do I get out of knocking out Devin Haney?" Unquote. Let me stop there. Is he serious? How about the most respect on your name in the fight game since the time you edged out a win versus Paulie Malignaggi? In fact, if AB goes in there and beats someone as highly touted as Devin Haney, that'd be one of the 2 or 3 biggest wins of his entire career. The only other ones that are even in the conversation would be Paulie and then maybe Daniel Ponce de Leon, which these were both very close fights. Ponce de Leon was well before the Paulie win, and these wins were back in 2011 and 2013. And how about this? He would establish himself as a tier above someone who many think is a top 3, top 5 lightweight. Broner hasn't been a top 10 in either of his recent divisions, 140 or 147, in years. He'd made what I thought was a terrible decision back in 2013 when he decided to leap 2 weight classes, going from 135 to 147, beat Paulie in a split decision to his credit, then took on Marcos Maidana in his very next fight. And even though Maidana was a 4-1 underdog, would you believe that? I knew that this hard-hitting Argentinian who had stopped Victor Ortiz, handing him his first loss, and almost stopped Amir Khan when Amir Khan was the man, Maidana would be too much for Broner at that time, who wasn't even a knockout artist at 135, let alone 147. And sure enough, Broner got dropped twice and suffered his first defeat. Ever since then, Adrien Broner has had a mixed bag of wins versus mid-level contenders, Adrian Granados, Ashley Theophane at best, and then a few losses anytime he did fight any elite fighters, Sean Porter, Mikey Garcia, Manny Pacquiao. And his fight versus Mikey Garcia at 140 was what I'd considered a 50-50 fight at the time. Broner was the bigger guy, the faster puncher, and Garcia had never even fought above 135. But Garcia dominated that fight and had Broner retreating almost from the opening round. It was terrible if you were Broner or a fan of AB. Since that one-sided loss to Garcia in 2017, Broner has only fought twice. A very hard-fought and competitive draw versus Jesse Vargas in one of Broner's most spirited fights in recent memory. That was 2018, and then the loss to Pacquiao at the beginning of 2019. Broner mentioned in an interview on Vlad TV that this was the first real break that he's taken from boxing since he was a kid, and burnout, especially in boxing, is a very real thing. But let's not be deluded into thinking that since you got paid the big money versus Pacquiao, that translates into an elevated boxing legacy where there's now no value to be gained in fighting a guy who's on a rocket ship in an upward trajectory like Devin Haney. Come on, AB. I know that this is prize fighting and you are about billions, but beating Devin Haney would absolutely boost your stock. Look at how Floyd Mayweather's win over a young and probably underexperienced Canelo Alvarez has aged over time, as Canelo went on to dominate the sport. That win is looking better and better for Floyd year by year. So why don't you give Big Bro a call and ask him what he thinks about you fighting Devin Haney and what you stand to gain versus lose. From a boxing and earning standpoint, what do you have to lose? The boxing community isn't taking your skills and performance levels seriously anymore. It's not as seriously as we were taking them 5, 6, 7 years ago. So if you think that you can beat Devin Haney and you want a fresh boost to your career, you fight Devin Haney now while you still have a chance at beating him. He's only 21 years old. Don't wait 2 to 3 years to where he's closer to becoming whatever beast he's destined to be. Give him his first L now so that when he goes on to do tremendous things, your name keeps popping up as the guy who beat him. This is an easy call, AB, unless, of course, you don't love your chances of beating him. Now, there is a weight issue here. Haney is at 135, lightweight. AB moves between 140 and 147 and has missed weight at 140 multiple times. And that was a few years ago. Losing weight effectively only gets tougher as you age. So you can either call Haney out to come meet you up at 140, or you can start losing weight a little early and try working out a 137, 138 pound catch weight agreement. Now, I'm not a fan of catch weights, but that might be the only way that this fight could happen at the present time. Currently, both Haney and Broner have other fights lined up. Haney is supposed to fight Yuriorkis Gamboa, which should be interesting. I'll definitely preview that one. And AB is supposed to fight Ivan Redkach, who knocked out a seemingly diminished Devin Alexander and then lost a pretty decent fight with Danny Garcia, which would pretty much put Redkach in that category, a fighter who's pretty much the highest level that Broner is able to beat. We'll see if Broner is still able to meet even that standard if him and Redkach takes place. He's certainly talented enough, but this is about focus and discipline, and Redkach does all he can to bring it. I don't think that he's going to stop AB because, nobody stops AB. He has yet to be stopped in his entire career. A very durable fighter. He knows how to survive, at least. So we'll see if anything further between AB and Haney materializes, but I'm just blown away by how this opportunity is viewed by Adrien Broner. But please, let me know your thoughts. Do you think Broner would beat or could beat Devin Haney if the fight were to happen in 2021, let's say at 140? Since it really is tough to imagine Broner dropping to anything lower than he's had to since 2013. Also, what do you think of young Devin Haney, and how does he stack up against the field at 135 and 140 right now? I also thought that the discussions and back and forth on social media between Haney and Gary Russell Jr. was interesting and could have potentially led to a very interesting fight. But sometimes I just feel like these all tug of wars and chirping on social media are to drive up interest and name recognition for these individual fighters who, let's be honest, during this pandemic especially, it's been tough to get the ball rolling for several of these promotion platforms and to get a lot of these fighters' careers back on track. So I get it. I just don't make too much out of many of these back and forths. Please leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.